7:21 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, let's talk about leadership and developing those skills, because the 4th Annual Gestalt Leadership Conference is coming up in exactly 1 month from now, April the 29th. A virtual event, obviously, with COVID-19 still very much around. The cost is $100 US. And to give us more information, we're joined on set by Maxine Attong. She's a Gestalt trained facilitator, executive coach, and a leadership specialist. You might be hearing her programs as well on I-95.5 FM, which is part of the OCM family. Ms. Attong, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, FAZEER.
You're more than welcome. Tell us about the event that's coming up in a month's time.
It's the 4th time that we're having our leadership conference, and the leadership conference is really birthed from the idea of how do we create leaders in this world, basically. And the whole idea about it is that we've gone through all the factors of production. We have the technology, we've had the resources. And so what is missing, and I think for a lot of us, what is missing is leadership. And I'm embracing leadership, in its different forms wherever it may exist. So last time we spoke about you leading your store, that, and how that works for you. And you being in this position, how do you take leadership? What's the impact that you want to make with this program? What is your intention when you sit behind the chair? And so the conference is to investigate, to explore, to invite and challenge leaders and other people who want to take leadership roles to actually put on their leadership mantle and try on for size a little bit of leadership for a period of time. So every year we sort of take a slice of the leadership pie, we explore it with the audience, and of course invite the audience to participate with us as we create a way forward.
So what do people have to do if they want to register for the event?
If they need to register for the event, they can go on my website, maxineattong.com, and there's a registration form there. You could follow us on Facebook or on IG at Gestalt Leadership, and you could always reach out to me on 724-7642.
Is there a deadline for registration?
No, we don't have to cater. It's virtual, so it's fine. There's no deadline.
No deadline. And but is it a challenge, though? And I was having this discussion with other personalities as far as when you have these events, and because of COVID-19, they are online, they are virtual. Do you get that same sort of connection with your audience and have the same sort of vibrant dialogue that I'm sure you would like to have?
So that's one of the things we really thought about in terms of having a challenge, because most of the feedback from our past conferences, that's the number one thing people like. People like the fact that we're accessible. People like the fact that they feel comfortable to be seen and heard on conference day. So we went to the best. We're using the WHOVA platform because that gives you a very near live experience. And we've structured the day in 2 ways. One, we have breaks between each speaker so that if you're working, you can take your emails, make your calls, and then return to session. And we also have networking opportunities within the conference day. So for about 15 minutes or half an hour, we do round tables. And then in each speaker's discussion, there will be room for you to meet other people and have a discussion about the topic. So we've really structured knowing that everybody is tired of being online, and yet people want to get more information, and people come to conferences to network. So even within the WHOVA platform, there is the ability, once you are a participant and I'm a participant, we could set up a meeting. We could meet and discuss, have a discussion, a private discussion about anything. So it's a great way to network, to meet professionals across the Caribbean and some in the larger world, as well as the conference platform will be open for 6 months after. So you can engage with any member of the audience as a member of the audience, as well as the speakers. And
you might have mentioned in your opening comment, is there a particular theme, a particular angle to the event that's coming up?
Yes, after 2020, we know that we need to talk about equity. So the theme for this year's conference is leading with equity. And the 2 speakers who I selected to work with me, Dr. Rama Naidu, he's from South Africa, and he has lived apartheid, and therefore he's committed, his whole purpose is to dismantle these systems wherever they exist. So he works in organizations with leaders, making sure that they could work to dismantle whatever is left in the fabric of their organizations. And then in the afternoon for the moderated discussion, we're joined by Nanci Luna Jimenez. And Jimenez works in the Washington, D.C., Portland area, and she definitely works a lot in anti-racism in the US, as well as building out social justice within organizations. So these are people who are practitioners who are actually doing it, and we're sharing our lived experience.
That sounds like a very heavy topic. This whole issue of equity, if you're talking about apartheid, South Africa, the United States, we see what is going on almost every day. The Georgia legislators have just passed legislation that makes it harder for people of color to vote.
Yes.
I mean, this is 2021, but let's bring it to our context here as the whole issue of, because that is a conversation here as well.
It is.
The issue of the haves and the have-nots, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. How does the discussion on equity figure into a leadership conference?
So it's really important because, as I always say, whatever happens in the larger system happens in the smaller systems. Our organizations are a microcosm of what's happening in the wider. So we've just come through a year of a pandemic and we're still in it. There are people who've lost their businesses, people who've lost their jobs. So what we found is that there is an erosion of wealth in people who are not super rich, so what we traditionally call the middle class. That has been severely eroded during the pandemic. So how in organizations are we, one, recognizing this? Two, how are we creating a sense of belonging and inclusion for all? Because we still, in organizations, do discriminate. And then the third part of it is how do we build and make sure that the equal opportunities are there for everybody to get a chance to be on the sexy project, everybody to have an opportunity for training and development. And actually that's what I'm going to be talking about in terms of my lived experience around belonging and inclusion and how to create that in organizations beyond the engagement survey.
And before we conclude, of course, and you give the reminders of the event itself and the contact information, are you seeing any shift in attitudes towards leadership? That, you know, the old-fashioned, you know, well, this is what I say, and you do what I do. I am the leader, the maximum leader, for want of a better term. Are you seeing any change in that? Are you seeing any desire for more collaborative sort of leadership, more engaged type of leadership in Trinidad and Tobago?
I think that's the blessing from 2020 and the fact that people had to retreat home. So all of a sudden the question of leadership, there was no maximum leader because nobody knew what to do. And so the organizations that transitioned, it was a combination of the HSSC professionals, the HR professionals, and that top maximum leader. So I think coming out of 2020, that's one of the benefits that we had. We could actually see that other people in the organization, at times they have to step up and take leadership for it to work. So therefore we know nobody is smarter than everybody. We've been through that. So the question is, how do we go forward? So I like to think of a blank canvas that 2021 and beyond is, where we could actually contribute and paint. We don't have to do it the old way. Convincing people to do that, of course, that's another discussion.
Well, indeed. Well, that might very well be part of the discussion that will come up on April the 29th. And as we talk about the event, the 4th Annual Gestalt Leadership Conference, Maxine Attong, they're clearly at the center of the organization, and indeed with two other important speakers from South Africa and from the United States as well. Just remind everybody again that because there's no real deadline, because it's all virtual, so there's no need for catering and so on, but tell them how they can register for the event once again.
So Leading with Equity is the theme of the 4th Annual Gestalt Caribbean Conference, Leadership Conference. And you can register on my website, maxineattong.com. You can follow us and ask us questions on Facebook, Gestalt Leadership, or on IG. And of course, if you need to reach out to me, I'm also on Facebook as my name and on LinkedIn as my name. And then you can call me at 724-7642. It's so funny to say that.
Well, it is what it is. That's what it might sound a little vain with all these things. Go to Maxine Attong this, Maxine Attong that, but it is what it is with all these social media things that you all are on. That I don't understand but you have to be. You have to be on these many different platforms.
Yes.
But you have the information there in front of you. Just type in Maxine Attong, Google it, and everything else will come up in that sense for the event coming up on April the 29th. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoy the rest of the day.
And let's go to the break now at 7:30. Here's an image captured by Robert Tardier. He says it's an evening at Blanchette Bay at Monas Island down there. A little grainy because it's an evening shot. And now for an image submitted by Mika displaying a sunset, well, after the sunset, and indeed the nice colors of the sky with the clouds as well, as we go to the break.